Hello and welcome to this tutorial on rendering JetFluids. Now today what we're going to be going over is rendering of the hybrid methods, which is the particle methods, which we have here, hybrid pick, flip and apick. So this is a simulation that I've previously cached, and what I want to do now is render these out. If I was to hit render now, you won't see anything because the particles are just being displayed in the viewport using the fake particle method. Show fake particles is checked. If I uncheck that, they will all disappear and they'll come back. So we can do this in two ways. The first way is to use thinking particles. So to do that, we actually need to use an instance object. So add one of those to our scene. I change the interface instance mode to multi-instance. And I'm going to change this viewport mode to off so that it doesn't try and put anything into the viewport here itself. It'll only use it for rendering. Next I want to create a sphere, make it size 1. This is going to be the size of all of the particles that we're going to be rendering. And with the pick instance selected, I'm going to drag that sphere into the reference object. This is what's going to be used for each particle. So the last thing we need is something for this position source. And we're going to use thinking particles for that. So first, if I come up to the simulate menu, thinking particles settings, this is where we're going to see our particle group when we enable it. So we click on the fluid and click on create thinking particles. And now our thinking particles group is going to be created and will be added right here. So we just grab our pick instance, and we drag that into the position source. And we can close that down. Now if I render, it's going to use a sphere for every single one of the points on that mesh there. We can actually make that blue, dragging a color onto the sphere. We'll render that once more. And then we can see our particles. Now just one point to remember, if you uncheck this, it's going to delete that group. And if it deletes the group, then the instance will no longer have that group in there. So let me demonstrate that here. If I uncheck create thinking particles, the group is going to disappear from here. And the instance no longer has anything in its source. So just be aware of that. If you are going to use the thinking particles, then just make sure that you leave that checked the whole time. But now we're going to show the next way of rendering these. So I don't want thinking particles, so that can stay unchecked. And I'm going to delete the instance object. But I'm going to leave the sphere, because I'm going to reuse that. Now what I'm going to use now is the MoGraph features. So under MoGraph, I'm going to get a cloner. I'm going to put that sphere underneath the cloner. Then on the cloner, I'm going to come down and I'm going to turn that onto multi-instance. And I'm going to do the same thing with the viewport mode. I'm going to set that to off. On the mode, I'm going to change that to object. And then I'm going to drag my object into this object, into here, which is going to be the actual fluid. Grab the pick and drag that into here. We don't need to align clone because we're just a sphere. And the distribution needs to be set to vertex. Now if I render, it's going to be using the MoGraph Cloner. Pretty much doing the same thing as the instance object, but it's just using the cloner instead. So you don't have to go through those extra steps of creating thinking particles. And now you can see the same rendering using a cloner. One point to note is that when you're using the cloner method, if you're playing in your viewport, the cloner can take some time on the initial frame. So you can see it's delayed, it's stopped for a while, a few more seconds, and then it'll go again. I'll show you that again. And here's a delay as it's setting up the cloner for the initial frame 0. So if you want to work with this just with the fake particles, and you're finding that it's going slow, just uncheck that to disable the cloner, and then you'll find that your simulation will display in the viewport there using the fake particle method without that delay. And just to finish off, we've done a final rendering of one of these. Render queue. And this is the final rendering from that particular simulation.